Hey everybody, thank you so much for coming to our workshop today. We're doing a series of professional development workshops for artists online during shelter in place to kind of help artists navigate both the offline and online world that will become more and more enmeshed in our reality moving forward. And establishing an online presence, I think, has always been a difficult one for many. So we're excited to have Michelle Tratner here, who runs the marketing department at SFAI, speaking on the topic today. And also to introduce myself, I'm Kat Trataris, and I manage the programs and exhibitions here as well as these workshops. So thank you again, Michelle, and I will turn it over to you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining me. And I'm just going to walk you through a few of the marketing touch points and give you some tools on how to establish yourself online. So first things first is marketing. Marketing is storytelling. And I think at the heart of it, all of what you see maybe through advertising and through personal endeavors, I think the most important thing is how you tell your own story and how you sort of pitch the work that you do. So why market yourself? So one of the best quotes I found was, unless you're in business for yourself or looking for a job, the idea of marketing yourself may not sound like anything that concerns you, but it's a skill everyone really needs to master, because ultimately you're going to look for a job. Ultimately, you're going to perhaps go into business for yourself, especially if you're going to be leveraging the work and the art that you create for yourself. So who are you? I think first, what makes you and your work unique, it's your niche, it's your thumbprint. And I think really like meditating on who you are and what brings you to the point you're at in your practice is definitely the first place you want to begin. So I guess it comes down to, what's your story? Have you thought about your story or how to tell it? When did you start practicing your craft?
Did you take my
Were
water?
you like 3?
Fucking water.
Were
My
you were you 3 years old? Were you 10 years old? When did you start working in the medium? How many mediums do you work with? I think really sort of articulating that in the process of marketing yourself is the foundation. So this is a story arc. One of the professors, Christina Wadke, who now teaches at the Stanford D School, drew this really simple story arc that outlines the trajectory of a narrative. Everyone has a story with a beginning, a middle, and an end, and it can be why you chose SFAI, how your work has transpired over the course of your education, and where you are today. Leveraging your story, and spend some time drafting your narration. Once you've narrowed in on what and who you are and what you want to do, that's when you would leverage your digital tools. And Christina in class would say, I am not an artist, which is super cute. So it's really, we all have our ways at coming at our story, whether it's, we're a fine artist or we are practicing some digital creativity. It's just really about starting with who you are, what the setting is, your struggles, and then how you've landed where you are. So once you've decided on your story, then decide which tools you want to use. So there's the idea of fonts. What creative inspiration have you done? What research have you done? Creating your website, social media, your domain name, and leveraging the right kind of photography. So I'm going to be just completely explicit here. You have to have a website. Many people use social media as a repository, and that's great. And I think it's a good exercise to engage in. But I understand it's free, it's formatted, it's fun. You get immediate feedback for your work, which is awesome for your dopamine. But ultimately, you do not own the content, and you're at risk of losing it. Recently at SFAI, we moved our Tumblr site and pulled it off of Tumblr and moved it onto our website, because we noticed the engagement with Tumblr falling off, and we were worried we were going to lose our content. So it's, keeping up with the trends in that space is, not always super easy. So make a website, use it as a way to hold your work, as an archive, at the very least. Do you want to use it as a place to sell your art? What do you want to do with your website? So I see some questions coming up on, do I have recommendations? And so I'm going to move into my recommendations. So Wix is a really easy way to start. It's super easy to learn. One thing I've been hearing from people is maybe it doesn't always have the best mobile scaling, but I'm not really sure. I didn't notice that. And it's free. And if you want to get a professional sort of account with them, you can. I am working on getting someone, well, I actually confirmed that I have someone from Wix coming next week to talk to you guys if you want to hear more about their recommendations on portfolio building. And I do believe they're going to be able to give you a link for a free professional site for a year. But I like Wix. I think it's flexible, it's beautiful, and you don't have to have a full understanding of code, which can bog you down. Try to keep it as simple as you can, and then work your way into leveraging any knowledge that you might have. Next one is Webflow. It's beautiful. It does have more of a steep learning curve, but I think there's more features on it in the UI framework. I think it has a better sales component to it. And I think, so if you want to sell your work, I think Webflow has a really nice interface for that. But again, it has a steep learning curve. So if this isn't exactly what you're looking for, it might not be the best place to start. Then there's Squarespace, super popular. I think it has a steep learning curve. I mean, you're really locked into these templates that they create. And if you want to create any new sort of features in the template, you can get really stuck in the HTML coding process. So it's not really that flexible, but it's easy if you're cool with the way that they, the layout. If you like the template, then I think run with it. It has a really well built out sales platform. So if you're really in the, in the space where you're ready to sell your work, Squarespace is probably the best for that. And there's some more websites here. There's ReadyMag, which portfolio, which you can play with. It's free with your Adobe membership. So that's, you can jump on that. Cargo, Acna in marketing, she uses Cargo. She really likes that a lot. It's flexible and easy for her. Something that came recommended from somebody at SFAI, their friend does this Kuntz Matrix, and I think this is more geared towards fine art, so that's also worth checking out. And just to let you guys know, I'll share this deck with you. I've attached links to all of these websites. Domain names. So there's a lot of ways to get a domain name. I think most of the websites that I just shared with you, you can get a free domain name with their name attached to the URL slug. If you don't mind that. If you want something more customized, don't talk to or go through GoDaddy, and it's pretty cheap. And they also do a free website hosting space, although I don't really know that many people who use it. But I think it's really important for you to commit to a domain name for at least a year. I think because if you switch things out too regularly, then you're going to find yourself in a place where people aren't going to be able to track you down for or find your work, especially if we're going to, I think through marketing, we're going to start creating of where your websites are if you want to participate in that. So make sure to just stick with one. Okay, coming into photography. I wanted to pull out some helpful tips and hints on different formatting. So JPEG, sort of maybe the most popular or commonly sort of thrown around image formatting. It can display lots of colors. It's common, compatible across multiple platforms. It uses a compression algorithm to sacrifice some image data to reduce file size. And you can see in that image that I have there, it's not as crisp as PNG, but it's optimal for most web pages because it'll reduce the page load time. And I think, something that I didn't point out on this deck, I want you guys to understand that site for yourself, and maybe you're trying to leverage it for a job. You have a very limited amount of time for a recruiter or some sort of job hiring space to look at your website. So the more you can reduce the load time, the more you can sort of limit the amount of clutter on your page, the better you're going to be in terms of being able to really show off what your skills are through your website. You have about 3 minutes is what they say. So that's why it's important to keep in mind like how you will how you'll prioritize where you're going to spend time, and loading time isn't something that you necessarily want to be bogged down with. Okay. So also with the photography, it's great to use raw quality documents as much as you can, 75 pixels per inch resolution, and on the wider side, around 1200 pixels max, if that helps. And then the PNG, and again, a sort of compare and contrast, you can see the eyes and the fox. The PNG on the left, it's crisper, and it's capable of displaying more than 16 million different colors, settings, and it uses what's called a lossless compression, which means no data is lost when saving. And there's two types, a PNG8, which is similar to a GIF or a GIF, even if it's a smaller file. But because they display so much detail, they tend to be super large, and they're best for logos. Otherwise, it's going to take a long time to load. And 90% of websites come down to the images you choose and also the fonts that you pick. Fonts. It's about legibility. So we have the top 5 fonts. We have Arial, New Times Roman, Roboto, Courier New, Times. You're probably wondering why we don't have Helvetica New on this spread, and I guess I'm showing a bit of my bias because that's what we use for the SFAI. Oftentimes, we'll use in different websites or different commercial spaces, we'll use fonts that are easily downloadable for other organizations to implement in their sales or their website. So Helvetica is super flexible. The next closest thing in the font family to Helvetica is Arial. And so it's good to keep in mind like how you would be using your fonts, and if you're in a commercial space, having people have access to that font can become more of a priority for you. If you get into some of these more customized fonts that cost a lot of money for people to download, you're going to lose your sort of the visual component to it. And I see a question, do you recommend more minimal? I do, but I'm a minimalist. I think it just depends on the story that you want to tell and what exactly you're trying to do with your website. The cleaner, the better. And I can do a whole sort of talk on fonts alone. When to use serif, when to not use serif. I think it just depends on legibility. You want to keep on your website 18 points. When you go smaller than 18 points, it tends to get really difficult to read digitally. So there's, clean, the right size, and when to use serif and not to use serif. You use serif for like headings, but you never really use it in the body. You always want to use a sans serif in the body. And typically don't use a bold unless it's going to be in a heading. And I'm happy to take questions after this. Okay, social media. So I'm not sure if you guys notice marketing's efforts to create sort of an ecosystem in our storytelling, leveraging social media. But something that I find really important is to make sure that what you have on your like Instagram is also what you're going to put on your website. And the reason why is because people want to know where they're going. And so if you have, your website handle in your social media and they like an image, then they go to your handle, they'll see the image and they'll get maybe more context, or they'll be able to orient themselves. And it's a good way to keep everything sort of in the family. And so I'm curious what touch points you guys find to be the most fun for you. I think there's been like obviously the trends have been shifting. I'm not sure how many people here were at the student senate meeting where I'm like, have you guys thought about using TikTok? TikTok's growing so much. I know that, obviously SFAI uses Instagram. We don't tend to use TikTok. So we can talk about that later. And then creative inspiration. I think the majority of what I will sort of encourage you guys to do and with your time is to research, find things that you like, create like a mood board. When it comes time for you to create your own website, or even when you're doing your social media channels, or even when you're telling your stories, find things that you like, see what people are doing that resonates with you, that comes close to your niche. I'm a big researcher myself. Marketing is heavily rooted in research. And so I like Dribbble. Dribble's my favorite. I think it has the most sort of up-to-date information for the most sort of like modern designs. Behance is also really great. And it's an Adobe product, so it's free for you guys. And then there's Pinterest. I am personally not a fan of Pinterest, but a lot of people, I'll find myself on it pretty regularly because anytime I research, everyone's on Pinterest. I guess that's maybe why I don't like it. I feel like there's no choice, but everybody has their thing and you should find your thing. And that's what I have for you. And I'm happy to take questions. I should see questions. Okay, let's see. I see I have an account on Wix, but it can only be accessed if you have a link. My website does not show up on Google search. Does that matter? So leveraging, like, that's interesting. I don't know how to answer that question because I'd have to maybe see. And that might be a really good question for Wix next week, because that shouldn't be the case. You should be able to search your name and have your website come up. Do you recommend to be more minimalist with fonts and design? I recommend being more of a minimalist, but if that's not part of your story, then I mean, I think that's really up to you. Do you recommend videos? I do recommend videos as long as it's part of the sort of storytelling narrative. I think if you're doing videos for, let's say, like painting or any work that's more flat, I think it's probably not the right area to be like putting your efforts in. But if you're sharing videos as part of your process, or you're sharing videos as part of like your craft, then it's absolutely imperative that you do have videos. And where you lay that out, I think is also important. You wouldn't want to put necessarily a video on your front page. Your front page should include your artist statement and give people an option of looking at your portfolio and videos. Okay. Okay, for a website, is it better to show all artwork or only show limited amount or only a specific body of work? I think it comes into how you organize yourself. So if you have your bio statement and then you have your portfolio, and then you can have like another tab that says, other work, I think you just need to create sort of a visual hierarchy of what you want people to look at. If you want people to see everything, you do really need to like scale it down, because again, you only have a limited amount of time if you're looking for a job. But if it's you're trying to apply to a program for school, I think you have a little bit more flexibility in that space. But definitely organize your work and what you need to look at now, and some process pieces and things to show maybe where you've come from. Can you make a recommendation about attracting audience, getting clients, buyers, followers? This is where social media is your best friend. Marketing yourself is about leveraging your social media channels, putting yourself out there, following people that you like their work, and tagging using hashtags to get people to look at your work. And maintaining it. I recommend doing at least 3 posts a week in order to create some flow to your social media. Is it acceptable to use photos with a smartphone for a website or a big no? I think they've come so far at giving you a pretty high fidelity image. I definitely recommend you can use your smartphone, get really friendly with Photoshop if you aren't already. There's great tutorials that'll help you really sort of edit the images, so you can get rid of any like shadows or anything from lighting that you don't have control over. But I think a lot of people use their cell phones for photography, and I'm not sure if you were able to tune into Alex's workshop yesterday. I missed it, but I know he gave some really good documentation tips, and I'm assuming maybe that was included in that. Maybe Alex, you could jump in if you're here still. Hi, Michelle. What's the best way to share sketch type work that also has written content? I have an active Instagram account, but I'm looking for something more blog-like. You mentioned SFA. I moved off of Tumblr. Yes, SFA, I moved off of Tumblr because the engagement dropped. I know there's some blog-like spaces like Medium that are gaining more traction, and I know, so I'm in a design strategy MBA program, and we're going to be leveraging more Medium, and you can add sketches and add more blog-like content on there. And then they have a really great dashboard, much like Tumblr, where you can engage with other similar platforms and other blog spaces where you can start sharing information. Is it possible to use Alex's? There's going to be I know that it was recorded, much like this was recorded. And so I know that link is going to go on the website. And you're welcome. I feel like there's so much to cover. So I'm not sure how else I can, let's see. I can probably expound upon things. Anybody want me to go over anything? Let's see. Should we talk about, how about storytelling? Do you guys want to talk more about storytelling in your artist statements? Show of hands, I guess. Yes, okay, cool. All right, so I'm going to come back to this slide. So I'm curious how many of you feel like the storytelling that you guys have been doing for your artist narratives feel like they're aligned with this this image that I have on the screen. Do you guys think about your artist statements in this way? Yes, no. I'll just assume that maybe you do, maybe you don't. I think it's really interesting to express a bit of like what you're challenged with. And I think to outline your website or outline your artist statement, it's good to sort of show, like, especially like your artist statement on the front page, like, this is who I am, this is where I've come from, and this is where I am now. And I think it's compelling. I think it's personal. I think it gives people an opportunity to get to know who you are, and it also, I think, examines sort of the problem solving nature that you have within yourself as being an artist. And so I find that this provided a lot of clarity for me, because I was able to talk about where I came from. So for me, in my trajectory of my creative space, um, I see suggestions on how to make our personal story interesting for the audience. I think it really comes down to letting yourself be vulnerable. And for me, like my background, I enjoyed painting. I moved from painting murals into doing digital creative work and getting into interaction design. And it was interesting for me to find that experience in the visceral of painting and being able to drag a brush into then using digital tools and finding my happy medium in that. And that story is personally mine. And I think everybody has their story that's personally theirs. Like maybe you started out painting or drawing and then you find yourself in sculpture or performance art. Like that in between, that meat that's in the middle of that, interesting. Like how did you get from point A to point B? And I think having these personal moments in your artist statement, as well as expressing that in your website and your digital touch points, is really strong and powerful. And should that be in a bio? I mean, I think a bio or an artist statement are very, I'm not really sure what the difference is, but I think not only is it in your artist statement, but being able to tell the story in the way that you present your work, like where you've come from and where you are, is really, I think, strong, and you can leverage your website in that way. Any more questions? Yeah, absolutely. I think a story told throughout a series of posts, on social media, absolutely. There was a question that was posed, I think, before a lot of you guys came on, like there's a lot of people who use Instagram to only show specific work at different times. And so there's that idea of like only showing maybe 6 images on your Instagram page and then archiving the rest. And why someone would do that? What are the strengths and weaknesses of only showing maybe a few images at one given time? And I think it's a really strong way to tell a little micro story. I think it's a strong way to keep users engaged with your social media. Like they know that maybe you're going to do a full refresh every week, so they're curious what kind of story you're going to tell next. And I think it's a good way to focus on different components of your work, in order to show your range and your flexibility. What do you recommend to avoid social media? Well, I know in a perfect world, social media wouldn't exist because it's such a time suckage. I genuinely don't have an answer to that, and I wish that I did. And I guess that's, I don't know. Social media is a way to engage with other people. I guess everything is going digital. So, and I think COVID is a way that we're really learning that, to stay connected, we have to give into Zoom meeting and finding out information on our computers. And so I think being flexible and leveraging social media seems like the answer now. I think I'll push the question back to you, um, Irina, that maybe, you could find a creative way to solve that problem. If you don't want to use social media, do you want to use like mail? Do you want to use like physical mail? Do you want to use, maybe when we get out of our shelter in place, do you want to do some sort of, I don't know, guerrilla like stickers in public places? Like I can't officially recommend that, but it seems to work, or posters, or, I think there's been a lot of tools leveraged before the digital space came into place. Maybe after COVID, so tired of having to look at screens, that they'll be ready for something new. So I recommend going after it.
Hi, Michelle. Can you hear me?
I
Oh,
can.
this
Who
is
is this?
Nivedita.
Let
Hi.
me.
Thank you so much for giving us your time. I had a question regarding social media. I have an account on Instagram, and
Mhm.
it is a closed account. And I've noticed that over time, while I was going to school at SFA, I started adding more people onto it. And then it was a
Mhm.
very personal account before, and now I have like contact, like on my friends list there's instructors, there's artists, and galleries and people on there, and I've realized that I should have probably thought about having another account for a professional purpose. um
Yeah.
what do you advise in tackling that situation right now? Is there like be having a personal account, is that a good idea to have both?
I mean, a personal account is a way for you to how you want to tell your story then in your professional space.
Right.
I've given this advice before. Like I had someone who was like, "Oh, I don't know how to do that," or "I didn't know that could happen." And like your friends and your family and your like people on your personal account are your best sort of like audience initially to roll out like, "Well, do I want to do this limited thing? How is that engagement going to look? Am I getting the sort of comments and maybe like count and engagement count that I does this make sense?" So I'm a big fan of like a rough draft.
Mhm.
If you want to put in the extra step because you're maybe feeling a little unsure or wobbly about it, I can't think of a better way to explore it than to have the stakes be lower.
Mhm. Thank you.
Yeah. Anyone else have any questions? I have a lot of respect for professors who hold court like this at a time. I don't know about you guys. Well, I'm happy to down a little bit earlier if that works for everyone else. And then there's just to let everyone know that I'll be hosting office hours from noon to 3 on Thursdays. Um, and so I will be sharing a link to that shortly. And then you guys can just pop on to Zoom and I'll be available. And next week, next Thursday, this time, Wix will come and do a more fine-tuned portfolio website deep dive with their product if you guys want to join in on that. And also, I think a few tips on our website with career development. So if that is all, Kat, are you still there? Does the school offer short-term courses or workshops on the subject of marketing? I'm not sure. I haven't seen much. So again, I'm happy to answer any questions in regards to that and offer any sort of help I can offline if you'd like. Help you look at your website and maybe get some more tools that I haven't been in this presentation. Whatever I can do to offer, I'm happy. Best way to contact me is my, here, I'll write in my email. And if there's anything else, otherwise, I'm gonna let you all go. You're not a student at this school. No problem. Thanks for tuning in. Cool. All right. Well, I'm gonna sign off now, guys. Thanks for coming.
Thank you, Maxie.
You're welcome.